Hello and welcome friends. If you are new to this channel then please subscribe. Let's see the streak of 7 starting with the first one. So here it goes. The game started with white moving e4 and it is me playing with white. So followed by d5 and f3, d4, d3, nc6. So the closing and it is getting the shape of reti opening Tennyson gambit. Now c3, e5, c takes d4, e takes d4. Now bishop challenging the queen. f6. Now bishop is threatened by the pawn. So bishop to f4. Now bishop to g4, threatening the knight. So it's okay. Second knight to d2, bishop to b4, then a3, b takes the knight and I cannot take it with the knight. So this was the trick because this will take the queen. So queen takes the bishop. Now queen to e7. Now bishop in place to e2. Bishop takes the knight. So it was a delayed move, I guess. So otherwise this pawn would have been doubled. So bishop takes the bishop. Now black castles and white castles. h6. Now giving some space to the bishop. Bishop attack. The bishop to h2 near to the king. Knight to e5. Bishop h5. Queen to g7. So it was only to safeguard these two pawn and to push ahead this pawn along with the knight in place. So attacking move from black. So f4, this is to be broken now. G takes f4, queen takes f4. Now queen jumped in to the defense, but this pawn was left undefended. So knight took the pawn. Now queen to g4 check and king b8 and there was a blunder. Now this queen is under attack. So queen takes the queen, knight takes the pawn. Queen takes c7 as this is supported by the bishop. Now king to a8. Now queen takes the rook and it is a checkmate. Good one. Now see the next one. Let's open the good. Now let's open the next one, the black pieces. So game started with e4, e5, nf3, d6, h3, a6, bishop c4, h6, d3, nf6, a3, bishop to e7, nc3, white I castle. Queen to e2, c5, bishop e3, b5, bishop d7, and takes d5, knight takes d5 and nc6, white castles now. Rook to e8, so creating some space for the bishop and so that it can defend this pawn and have a check on this pawn as well, and this can be pushed ahead and this rook will support this pawn. Rook a to d1, bishop f8, c3, bishop e6, c4. Now the idea is this pawn can take this pawn, but for me this knight should go from here. So knight threatening the knight and pawn took the pawn, knight took the knight, pawn took the pawn and bishop took the pawn and pawn took the pawn and rook took the pawn. So position is equal as of now. So knight d2, bishop a8. So this bishop is here on the last row, but it is having an eye on this pawn. So knight to c4, rook c6, rook c1, d5, knight d2, d4, bishop takes h6. So this was interesting and surprising because if black want to sacrifice this, it will have to bring at least two pieces for the checkmate. So that is not there, and this rook is also here. So this was a mistake or blunder from white. So black took advantage there. Rook takes the bishop and knight to c4. Now queen in place to g5. Now this is very dangerous because this rook is here. It can easily capture this. It cannot take it back. King will have to move, and there is a mate in one. So there is no way that black can defend it, white can defend it without sacrificing the queen. Can sacrifice it, but still there is a mate in one. So king to h1 and checkmate. So here I started with, white started with e4. I have black pieces, e5, knight to f3, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6. So 4 knight games, and bishop to c4, h6, knight to e2, bishop c5, knight g3. So very good position for both the knight at one side, and it is going to castle this side, and this king will be in a very strong position because all the pieces will be set to defend the king. Knight to g4, castle, castle, c3, d6, f4, a6, d3, and e7, h3, nf6, nh4, c6, queen to f3. So this is as of now not doing anything, but it can sit here, one, it can come here, two, then it can come here. So queen can sit here, and with other supporting pieces it can take advantage over this king side of black. Next move, d5. This pawn is to be broken. For that, bishop went back, and this bishop attack was also to be restricted. This is like, this is pinning this pawn. It has to be broken. Bishop to e6. So if chances are there, black can go ahead and eliminate this bishop or go for the exchange. Bishop takes h6. That pawn is taken by the bishop. So g pawn took the bishop, because as of now I didn't see any threat associated at this place, because no check in one or two moves. Queen to f6. So knight was taken, and knight will sit protecting the king. So knight g to f5. So it is asking for the exchange, and this knight can sit here. So queen takes the queen first, and it was undefended. So knight takes the pawn, king to h7. Now knight is playing the game, so bishop will take the knight, and now it is little comfortable. So some relaxed game for black. So going for the exchanges, and so this is a little tricky because from here a king cannot come here, it cannot come here also, then it will be a checkmate. So it will have to come here. So it was very tricky move by white, good move. So king come to the last row, and rh6. Now I have to like give away the queen and play with the remaining pieces. So it is still black is still ahead in the game. So king here, knight went. Now this two center pawn can give victory to black. So white don't want to lose the rook or go for the exchange, so it is trying, and pawn is to be defended. So knight is threatened, so knight comes here. Now this king can go here, but it is of no use because if this will come, anyway this will go. So let the knight go and push the pawn ahead. So this will create some pressure on white. So this knight had to take that. So bishop sits in place, and now king there, and rook to h8. Now it is very difficult for white to defend. So rook f7, one check. Okay, so king to e6. Now rook cannot go and take this one because there is a checkmate n1. So rook sits there and now checkmate. So let's see the third one. So now this I 2 3 4, this one. So I have the white pieces. Game started with e4, e5, nf3, nc6, d4, d6, d takes e5, bishop to g4. This was interesting because it happens when this pawn doesn't come here. I'll go for the exchange and opening the queen for the exchange. So black has defended this pawn from moving from d5. So bishop there, bishop took the knight, bishop took the bishop. Now knight will come here threatening the bishop, and bishop is back. So knight threatening the pawn, knight defended the pawn. Bishop, white castle, black castles. So all good as of now. h3. So stopping this knight movement. The knight is looking at this square. f5. Now bishop developed to f4. Knight to g6, attacking the bishop. Bishop to h2. c5. Bishop to f3. Rook b8. Queen to e2. Rook b8, because if this pawn will be pushed, no, black will defend this knight somewhere and this bishop can capture the pawn. So this was for that. So now rook to e8. Rook to d1. Bishop to f8. So rook to e1. Queen c7. Queen d3. Rook b to d8. Knight b5, attacking the queen, and queen to d1. Sorry, queen to b6. f4. Knight e5. Bishop to e5. Now bishop takes e5. Now d pawn takes e5 and this queen is under attack. So queen to e3, queen to c6, rook d2, rook takes the rook and queen will take the rook. Bishop e7, queen to f5. One pawn was there, so queen captured that pawn. Now attack on the queen by the pawn. b6, queen c3, bishop d6, b4. Now this cannot capture it because queen is threatened, it is under attack. So queen to a8. So it is looking at this phase, but this bishop was left undefended and that's the end of the game. So black resigned here. So I have the white pieces this time again. So let's play with the white piece. I played with the white pieces. With e4 I opened, e5, nf3, bishop c5, d4, e takes d pawn, knight takes the pawn and bishop takes the knight and queen will take the bishop. So knight threatening the queen. The queen pushed ahead. So here knight to bishop exchange has taken place. So knight threatening the queen again. So queen to a safe square c4, queen e7. Now two pieces are attacking this. So this is under attacked and defended by only one, so one more piece is to be brought in for its defense. So knight defended the pawn. a6, bishop developed. b5, queen threatened, the queen to d3, d6, bishop to the right place, bishop b7, white castles, knight to e5. Actually this is a fork on queen and bishop. So anyway, I had the bishop earlier, I have taken the bishop earlier, so I can go for this exchange. It will equate the position, but knight refused the position and castles, and I set up the pawn so that knight doesn't come here. Then now knight took the bishop, queen took the bishop, bishop took the pawn. So now black is a pawn ahead in the game. So even though I capture it, it will be a pawn ahead in the game itself. So I saved the queen. c5, pawn to be stopped or blocked there. Now c4, bishop to e3 development, and rf to d8. So this rook is defending this bishop. So here rook is brought. So queen to g7, first thing first. So queen to a safe square. rad1. Now this pawn is not blocked by any other pawn, so it is to be stopped, and it is semi-open file. So it is good to bring the rook on the open file or semi-open file. d5, bishop stopping the pawn and attacking the knight. So knight attacking the queen. So queen to a safe square f3, and also having an eye on this pawn and this diagonal on both sides. So f5, so pawn defended the knight again. So bishop is supported by the pawn. Now h6, rook is trying to get doubled there. Rook to e8, rook doubled. King to h7, king to h2. So knight is trying to attack the queen, but it left the pawn undefended. So queen took the pawn, knight back, and queen there. Queen to g5, knight will have to move from here. So one of the square was here, but in this case I will capture both the, not with this but the queen, because this will capture and this will capture back, then I will capture back, and anyway this will be defended. So queen gave the check. So with this knight is attacked, so knight will have to go somewhere. So queen check, king went back, and now knight is attacking the queen. I should have gone for this capture, because this pawn cannot take it back, and anyway rook exchange won't do any harm as of now. So what was played, I first went to the pawn and gave the check, and in second game one check and black resigned here. Let's see the sixth one. So this time I have the black pieces. Game started with d4, d5, c4, e6, nc3, nf6, bishop g5, bishop e7, c takes d5, e takes d5, rc1, ne4, bishop f4, c6, ne4, d takes e4, a3. Now black castles, e3. So rook, this bishop is supporting the, is supported by the pawn. Bishop is supported by the pawn. f5. So pawn is supported by the pawn, and then knight. Knight jumped out, and king to h8, and bishop to e2. King was moved here because this file is open, and bishop and queen can align in this diagonal, which can be dangerous later in the game. So bishop f6, white castles, nd7, d5, c takes d pawn, and queen takes the d5 pawn, nb6, threatening the queen as well as saving this pawn. This was undefended, so now knight moved from here, and this pawn is defended by this bishop. Queen takes the queen, rook takes the queen. Now bishop attacking the rook and the knight. So okay, I went for the bishop if white will go for the knight. So bishop is defended. I, instead of moving the knight, I just went for the defense, counter by the rook. If bishop takes it, rook can capture the bishop. So now this is here aligned for the quick checkmate, because this is not having, king is not having any move on the upper floor, so it is dangerous. So creating one space and threatening the knight. So here it took, now bishop is under attack. So I took the bishop, knight took the bishop, and created a space for the knight. So knight again back and check. So now knight is here threatened, so it will threaten the rook. So went back from here to g3, threatening the rook. Rook to b2, again saving the knight. Rook to d6. So I have to go down now because it is like blocked by the rook, and this pawn is anyway defended by this bishop, so not a problem, only I have to save the check. So bringing the king here at f7. Now knight to h5, bishop e6, bishop took the bishop. Now rook to c8. The idea is to go for the exchange and you can lose the game. So white defended it, and rook took the bishop, rook took the rook, pawn took the rook. Now the pawn game or the end game started. So now I had to save this bishop from here, so getting the rook in between so that it can go away or go for the exchange. So it moved down, I took the knight, king started moving down, and so supported the pawn. Now the game is only the end game, so blunders and time pressures are high in such games. So it is like white can do most of the time checks to save its position, otherwise white already had almost lost it. So now this was a slip of mouse, so no problem. In the next move I will capture the pawn. So white will also try to capture the pawn and I will let it go, no problem. So I will move it, move it, move it, move it. Now black is in a very good position and white cannot defend it easily. I would have gone for the check, and in the next move attack the rook, but looking at the time pressure, I was looking on the other side. I had only 40 seconds left at that time for check, so I counter check and pawn went. Now black cannot stop the queen, so check, check, one pawn is gone, check, check. Now there is no move other than this one, so pawn was moved and checkmate. Let's see the last one. So in the last game, the seventh one, so I was having white here, So game started with e4, e5, nf3, nc6, nc3, a6, d4, c takes d4 pawn, knight takes d4 pawn. So knight should capture this, otherwise I will capture, giving a chance to exchange the queen, and king will move, or if this comes here, this pawn will be isolated. So exchanging the knight, h6, white castles, bishop to c5, queen e2, knight f6, a3, black castles, knight to a4, bishop e7, b4, d6, bishop e3, bishop g4, f3, bishop h5, c4, d5, c takes d5, c takes d5. Now this should have had taken this, but okay, knight in place. So pawn was allowed to push ahead, and this was a good move from black. That pawn is so ahead in the game. So d4, because if pawn is ahead, it is very dangerous, because in 3 moves it can win a piece. So good move from black, and white couldn't stop it there. It should have had like exchanged it there itself. So bishop took the knight, and pawn took the knight, pawn took the bishop, sorry, and a5, queen to e1, a4, bishop to b5, knight back to h7. This was to bring it somewhere ahead in the on the board. So queen to d1, so attack on the pawn. So white can capture this pawn, because it is not defended by black, and black cannot defend it also. So it pushed the pawn so that it can create some space for the attack. So white captured the pawn, blocking the piece movements. Bishop take the pawn, and queen to c8, attacking the pawn. So bishop will save this. Bishop to g6, bishop attacking the rook, knight g5, and bishop took the rook. Queen f5, queen takes the bishop at f5, then rook to f2, bishop to f7, very good place for the bishop. Now queen to b1. Offer for the queen exchange was declined, so queen to f4, bishop attacking the queen again, queen h4. So this knight was in a very dangerous place, so bishop took the knight, queen took the bishop. Now queen on the second row, creating more pressure on the white. So rook to f8, rook placed to e1, a pawn pushed. As I said, if this is a passed pawn, it can be very dangerous sometimes to stop it. So white will have to really stop this, otherwise it will be difficult. So one place was to bring it here, but it was a miss, and because of that this was the wrong place actually. Queen should have come here to stop the pawn. So rook to d8, rook to d1, d2, queen c2, queen e3, king f1. Now king will have to come forward to defend the position. Bishop b3. Now white will have to sacrifice or go for the rook to bishop exchange. So queen was brought on the last row. So bishop took the rook and queen took the rook, and position is equated. So queen took the pawn, rook brought in, taking the pawn, rook captured, and position is equated. So queen, king to f2, check, then queen blocked the check. Now again check. So black is willing to go for the draw, but white refused it. Queen to g6, again check. So again check. So now exchange took place, and it is the end game. So end game is very crucial. So should know how to get advantage of the king restricted movement and pawn movement. So if any pawn is allowed and any one pawn becomes a pass pawn, so it will be definitely a win for him. So here creating some position so that king will come in place, blocking the king's movement. So now this check will create my pass pawn. So this was the trick, and pass pawn is created, and black cannot stop this. So now it is a time game, and I will have to just move ahead and give the checks to the checkmate. So this was the 7 game streak. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Thank you.